Hello, my name is Dylan Young. I'm a four-time Sitecore Technology MVP, and today I will be covering a topic on how to get Horizon working with Docker. The solution I'm going to be using is already set up to be running Docker for Sitecore, so that will be a prerequisite for this course. This is 10.1, so keep that in mind as well. This would theoretically work for older versions. However, keep in mind that Sitecore is only recently, as of 10 plus, started releasing a Horizon or any Sitecore images in their container registry. So for this, we're just going to be kind of showing the steps that you need to do to get Horizon working with our Docker setup. And let's go ahead and get started. So the place I'm going to start is actually in Docker Compose. In this solution, and you'll notice in most of the Sitecore demonstration or guidance solutions, they have a Docker Compose file. This is going to typically represent an out-of-the-box Sitecore 10.1 or whatever the version is that you're currently working with. And depending on what topology you've configured, this might represent an XP0 or a XM1, etc. So we need to make changes not to the Docker Compose.yaml, but actually to the override. So the override represents changes that we're making to our out-of-the-box Docker Compose for in this instance 10.1 Sitecore. XP0 is represented here, and now we're making changes to it. So the changes that we have in this override file consist of right now mostly just some custom build configurations that we have. I'll talk a little bit about the Docker build folder, and then we do volume mounting of the license file. That's one other additional change that we have as well. So what we need to do to get started is that we're first going to need a Horizon service. So this would actually represent, in a sense, another website for Horizon. So Horizon doesn't run inside the CM server, it runs on its own instance. So to do that, let me just copy over from this example cheat sheet that I'm using the Horizon service, because obviously I don't want to type all this out. So I'm going to paste this in. I like to kind of have some sort of structure to the structure I'm pasting here. So I am going to put it right underneath the CM. Looks like it went too high up, so not in terms of where it's placed, but how it's placed. And then I shift tab, and it brings it back down one level. So that's the correct structure. I like to add a little space in between just so that there's some clarity or a separation between services. So what we've placed here is a few things just to talk about. The environment variables real quick. Those are all the environment variables that we'll need for our Horizon service. We're doing volume mounting here as well. So if you weren't doing volume mounting of the license file, then you might do this differently. Because we're doing that, we also have this definition for the volume for the license file. In addition, we also have our build configuration and our image up here. So first off, the build configuration, we have a Docker folder, Docker/build. And underneath that build folder, we have all these folders that represent our services. And in each one of these, there is a Docker file, which basically tells it how to build this image. It's kind of typical best practice to have one for each of the services that we're defining. So, and if you don't plan on making any modifications to it, you would just kind of pass in the image that you want to use and then kind of pass it back out. So you don't really do much with it. Whereas what we're going to actually show for some of the CM and MSSQL, we're going to be making modifications. So some of these are a little bit more complex, and we'll get to that in a second. So back to our Docker Compose. So basically, we need to actually create this folder, HRZ. We don't have that currently. So we'll have a custom Docker build step for or a Docker build for the image for Horizon. Now we pass in the base image. The base image is coming from Sitecore's container registry. So there's actually some, and we'll take note of this, some new variables that we're adding to this Docker compose file. We actually created this one as well as this Horizon version. So we'll need to make sure that we use those variables or provide values for those variables in our .env file or environment file. So, and then the image is going to be the image that's output from this. So it's doing a build, and so then it has a registry value here. This is actually blank in our local instance. If we get to a point where I do videos on, how to do builds and things like that in a DevOps pipeline, we'll talk a little bit more about this. And then there's the Docker Compose project name. This would put training. I think that's the name I use in my environment. Docker Compose name training. And then, then it would just be the Sitecore Horizon and the version number. So we're basically creating a custom image for this, and then it would be used in our local environments. These potentially could be used also. This same sort of process is used in a DevOps build pipeline as well. Isolation, we just leave in the same. Isolation is set as a variable. I believe it's set as default right now. I plan on doing a topic about isolation in general and how that works and some of the things you should know about it. Health check I'm not going to cover. Depends on is important because the Horizon service depends on identity server and the CM instance. I would say technically it doesn't really depend on CM, but it definitely depends on the identity server because it's a different service or website that's running. When you go to Horizon, you need to authenticate yourself, and because of that, it will bounce you back to identity server to authenticate. Same way that the CM server does it, or service. And then we have these labels also at the bottom. These are for traffic, and I plan on also doing a topic on traffic, the reverse proxy that's configured. So that's it for the Horizon. Now we need to start thinking about making some changes to our CM and MS SQL. So this service that we defined, this is just for the service itself to run. So if we went to, and I also didn't mention the token I'm using for Horizon host. This is going to be the URL that I'm going to find that the Horizon website sits on. For this, it's going to be horizon.training.localhost. So for now, all we have is just the ability to run Horizon separately. Theoretically, this would be fine. We could just tell users to go to horizon.training.localhost as an option. But what we really want is the CM environment. When you log in and you're on the Launchpad, you see a button that says, "Hey, go to Horizon." So that's what we want. But to do that, we have to make some customizations to the CM as well as MS SQL, because MS SQL has content changes that we have to make to add those items to the Launchpad. So let's start with the CM. Let's talk about the changes that we need to make. We need to first be able to pass in another image. So the reason we're able to pass in multiple images to create one final image is that we're doing multi-stage builds. And so you're able to pass in multiple things, and we'll show this in a second. And then it can do certain things as it builds our CM service image. And so what we want to do is pass in an image that represents our Horizon changes as well. So to do that, we just need to add a new args definition, and we're going to call this HRZ image, and then we're going to pass in, we're actually going to use there it is. We're going to use our modules registry. So we're basically referring to the Sitecore Docker container registry for this image. Horizon integration, if I can spell, XP0 because that's what the topology that we're using. This, if I can spell correctly, there is also an XM1 and an XP1 for this, so it depends on what you're trying to do. I have seen instances where you just create a variable for this, and then you don't have to necessarily worry about it. And then we're going to use 2.26.0 1809. So because this image isn't being used directly, we don't have to necessarily worry about using the OS version. And I don't plan on going too much into this, but we're just going to use, because these are images used that contain files and database scripts and things like that, we're just going to use 1809 for this. And technically, there is a URL that I'll link in the description that can provide you the entire name for all the repositories here. These are repositories, and then all the tags for those repositories, and I'll link those in, and that describes basically what you'll find in the Sitecore Docker container registry. So we need to specify that. There's actually one other setting. I actually recorded a session a few days ago, and I made this blunder myself. There's actually an environment variable that we also need. So we need to have one that's called Sitecore Horizon client host. And we're just going to specify this as the Horizon host. And how this works is that this is basically something that's going to get replaced. It's going to get replaced in the Horizon images files for the CM server. It's got files that take that token, and then you essentially just replace it, and that's all kind of handled out of the box with Docker. So that's the CM. So like I said, there was one other change, which was to MSSQL. And so I need to also specify a Horizon image. And I should specify here that a lot of this process is similar to doing other content or other module installs. So I'm actually going to show other module installs in more videos coming up. Sometimes I think I can't. XP0 assets 2.26.0 1809, like I said. And so I think that is all. So that's it for the Docker Compose. Obviously, we just defined a bunch of things there that we now need to go and actually set up. So one of the first things that we did was create this Horizon service. We need to set up this build context. So we don't have that Horizon folder currently, so we'll just create it. HRZ. You can call this whatever you want. We could have called this just Horizon, but yeah. And then we'll just call this Docker file. And that's a common syntax. So notice that we didn't have to specify / Docker file here. It's because it knows it's looking for a Docker file, this build context. So just FYI, we need to make sure that this file always has the same name because it's looking for this. So to start out, I'm just going to copy what is in our ID. And actually, this is the only changes I currently have for our Horizon image. We take in an image and we pump that image out. So we're taking in the Sitecore image, and then it pumps it out, and then it names it the training kind of solution specific image name so that it can be reused. Theoretically, it can also be used and pushed out to our container registry if we have one, if we're doing DevOps pipeline builds. So there's not much modification we need to make to this. There is actually somebody reported a bug I've seen on the web, some sort of patch you need to apply. So you could theoretically add transformations in here. And I don't have any examples of this, but I hope to maybe do a quick video on how to do transformations and configuration changes on specific image or these specific images, keeping in mind some of these roles are handled differently than others. So this is the only modification we need to make to this. So let's back out, go back to our Docker Compose. And so now I want to focus on the CM. So we passed in this image, and hopefully I spelled it correctly, into our Docker file that we have here. So the next steps that we have here is we need to specify as an argument that this is being passed in, and then we need to do the steps to get out of that image the files that we need to install in this image that we're creating. Do that on this, we'll just create one, and this should match the argument that you passed in. So we call it HRZ image, and then we, for a multi-stage build in Docker, this is a Docker terminology, we just do HRZ image, and then we give it a friendly name, which is Horizon, and now we can use that image again. So we really want to use the working directly of the root here. And so, and I have some stuff commented out here. This is if I was doing a solution. I had a solution image, and then I wanted to copy the files into the CM. This is pretty powerful because then you could do a solution build, and I plan on doing a topic on that at some point. A solution build where you pump out different artifacts into different folders like platform, or you might have a Horizon folder, or you might have a XConnect folder, and then you can move those artifacts, those build artifacts for the solution, into the role that makes the most sense. So it's pretty simple. So we just need to make sure that we're in this working correctly. So we wouldn't want to insert these lines above unless we wanted to specify this path specifically. So we could do that, but it would make more sense to just run it here. So add Horizon module. And so then we'll do copy from Horizon, and then we'll just specify the folder. This is the folder inside the Horizon image that we're attaching. Obviously, you could spin up that image separately and then view the contents of it and determine what you could and could not move over. But it's already provided for us, so we can just do this. And so what this says is take from the Horizon image that we're passing in. We're going to take the module/cm/content folder inside of that, and we're going to put it into the root. And the root happens to be the CINetW root. So this will move what's in this folder into our Horizon, or our content management root folder for running Sitecore. And so this will move any configuration, things like that it needs to run Horizon. And that's it for this image. Now we're going to jump over to MSSQL, because remember, we also made changes to that as well. Right here, we added another Horizon image argument. So I am going to jump over to that MSSQL Docker file. And now you see that this one doesn't have a whole lot in it. So this is the first time we're kind of modifying this. So I am going to add a new arg, Horizon image. And Horizon is one of those modules that you don't have to have anything else really installed other than a base Sitecore. If you are installing SXA, you need Sitecore PowerShell extensions for obvious reasons. So just something to keep in mind. Some might rely on the other pieces to function properly. So Horizon image, if I can spell, hopefully my spelling won't cause half this stuff to not work correctly. It's not really my spelling, it's just my typing is horrific today. And then I will copy this because I don't really want to type this out, especially with my typing today. So then we will add that Horizon module. And now keep in mind, this is a SQL box. This does not have Sitecore on it. So we're taking from that Horizon image a module/DB. So in there's a DB folder. We drop everything in this Horizon data folder, and then we run a deploy database script, and we specify the Horizon data as it's all sitting on their C drive. And then when we're done, when it's done with all that, we remove the item and the path from the C drive so that we have a clean C drive. We could theoretically leave this if we wanted to see the contents of that, but which we don't. So save. And so that's it for the build configuration. So now we've done the build configuration, we've done the Docker Compose override changes. The last bit is making changes to this environment variables folder or file. So the changes here, I briefly talked about this. One was the Horizon host. And this will be horizon.training.localhost, like that. And then we have a Sitecore modules Docker registry. Honestly, I probably could have made, because these are only slightly different. One only has an additional path on the end. So did we need to necessarily define a whole nother variable for that? Probably not. That's up to your discretion how you want to handle that. And then we have a variable for the Horizon image version. This is for specifically the service itself. So notice it's running or using LTSC 2019. So this is should work with our environment or most people's environments. And I believe that is all. So, and I'm probably forgetting something. So, so the next step is we can just save this change. And now let me open up a terminal. It's in administrator mode. And I'm not going to show me navigating to it. So now this is our, so just clear the screen, and then so now we're ready to run this. A few things first. I want to, because I've been using this for playing previously, I'm just going to run a clean data. If you are running on a blank instance, you've never run a Docker Compose before, you can skip that step. It looks like I probably already ran it before. Another thing I want to do is just to make sure that there's no issues, I'm going to do a Docker system prune. This kind of removes like images that aren't being used anymore. It looks like I've run that before. I think I actually might have restarted my machine since the last time I ran some of these commands. And now we're pretty much ready to run a Docker Compose up-d-build. Now, we want to make sure we run a build, because if you've already done a Docker Compose up build in the past and you already have everything created, if you don't run a Docker Compose up-d-build, then it will use the CM instance that you previously had. That CM instance won't have our modules for Horizon added to it, so you won't see the button. Is that essentially the outcome that you'll see there? It will force you to build the Horizon image if you don't specify -- build, just because it's a new service that it hasn't seen before. But it will not run your already built CM and MS SQL. So just make sure to run that full command first. All right, the build is complete, and now it's going to basically spin up our environment. You'll notice that this takes a little bit of time, but something that's new is that you should see it spin up the Horizon container as well. And then once all this is done, we'll load this up in our browser. See, we had an issue there. I did actually forget something. So we'll just abort Docker Compose down. Pull it down. I did forget one extra step in that. So if we go back to our Docker Compose override, I actually specify in the Horizon service, probably something that's not needed necessarily, but I specify Horizon deploy folder, and that doesn't exist. So we just need to create that real quick. So I'll just call it Horizon, and then I will do a new file .getKeep. If you're not sure what the .getKeep is for, this is for making sure the folder gets checked in a solution controlled environment. If you don't do that, then Horizon's folder would not get checked in, and then you'd have some issues because you'd basically get the error that I just had. All right, so all that's down, and then I'll just rerun everything. All right, it says it's done, so we're just going to open up our browser here and go to this URL. If you get a 404 error, this is not untypical. Sometimes it takes a while for the CM environment to spin up, so we'll give it a few seconds here. This 404, by the way, if for those that aren't aware, this is from traffic, the reverse proxy saying a 404. So if you get that, don't worry about it. It means that you're probably just waiting for your CM to fire up. You could be running into memory issues as well, as a possibility as well. But now you can see, just have to wait a few seconds longer and just spin up. If you never get it to spin up, then you should take a look at your instance, see if there's any error logs coming back that's preventing the CM instance from firing. But you'll see I just logged in and into identity server, which will take me back to the CM or content management environment. And then if everything worked perfectly, which who knows, it's a demo, we should have a brand new interface for 10.1 because that's the version we're running for the Launchpad. And we'll also have that Horizon button. And then I'll show clicking on it, and that will be it, if that's how it looks. And there is a few promising signs. So the Launchpad did come up. It's looking like the 10.1 Launchpad that has that great new interface. And then we do see our Horizon button, so we can click on that. And if everything works correctly, this should take us, oh, I forgot something. Let's kind of go back, and we'll do a Docker compose down. So yes, I need one additional setting on this. So I need to specify the Horizon host as an additional cores origin. So if you don't specify this, you'll get that error that I just showed. And so I will paste this here. And so that is all you need to fix that issue. And so if it got back down, it's almost down. I will, instead of doing a build this time, I don't need to because this is just an environment variable. So I should be able to just do a Docker compose up. This at least shows a good representation of how you would get past some of these issues. All right, let's back down. So now I can do a Docker compose up -d. So that's all I need to do, and it should come up a lot faster. Notice it's not running all those build steps. It's already got all the images, so it doesn't need to build them all again. And so this should go a little bit faster. All right, that is done doing the up command. So let's go back here. I'm going to start back at the CM environment to show the full process. So now the environment came up. I'll log in. Back to identity server like before to authenticate that user. And then it should take me back to Sitecore to the Launchpad. And there we are. We're back on the Launchpad. Horizon still displaying. We'll click on that, and now we shouldn't see that error anymore. It's going to take us to identity server and then to our Horizon instance, which it has horizon.training.localhost. So there we are. We have now Horizon running. It's bringing up the blank kind of basic Sitecore homepage here. Give it a couple seconds. It's probably going to take a little longer just because I haven't kind of warmed up this entire environment yet. So, and that's pretty much it. Please definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel and like this video if you like the contents. Like I said, I have some videos coming up on where I'll show SXA, SPE, JSS, the Sitecore management service. So that completes today's topic. Hopefully, you have the same success with this as I do. If you don't, leave a comment, and I'm sure somebody either will respond that did get it working correctly, or I will respond and help you get to the final result that you need to get to. All right, and good luck. Bye bye.